Blake left for his deployment 47 days ago. I know because I've been marking them off on the kitchen calendar, little X's in red pen like a prisoner counting down a sentence. Except I'm not counting toward his return anymore. I'm counting the days since I destroyed our marriage, since I proved that military wives who cheat are exactly the stereotype everyone assumes we are. His wedding ring sits on my nightstand, right where he left it the morning he deployed. "Too dangerous to wear in the field," he said. "I'll keep it safe for you," I promised, sliding it onto my thumb because even his ring finger is bigger than mine. I wore it like that for exactly 19 days before I took it off and set it on some stranger's nightstand while I betrayed everything that ring represented. Fort Campbell is the kind of military town where everyone knows everyone's business, where wives gather for support groups and coffee mornings, where we're supposed to hold each other up during deployments, where we promise to be faithful while our men serve their country. I broke every unspoken rule of being an army wife, and I did it with another soldier's husband, a man whose wife was at the same support group meeting where I cried about missing Blake. I should start with the deployment ceremony. The gymnasium packed with families, little kids waving American flags, wives trying not to cry in front of their soldiers. Blake held me so tight I couldn't breathe, whispering promises about coming home safe, about the life we'd build when he got back. We'd been married exactly 4 months. Still had wedding gifts we hadn't opened. Still called each other husband and wife like we were trying on new clothes. 6 months will fly by, he said, though we both knew he was lying. 6 months is forever when you're 24 and used to falling asleep next to someone every night. "I'll be right here when you get back," I promised. Another lie, though I didn't know it yet. The chaplain had given a speech about strength and faithfulness, about how military marriages were forged in steel. I'd squeezed Blake's hand during that part, feeling noble and strong and sure I was different from the statistics. 40% of military marriages end in divorce. 60% of those involve infidelity during deployment. Numbers I'd Googled and waved away, because we weren't numbers. We were Blake and Hannah, high school sweethearts who'd beaten the odds before. Henderson's wife sent him Dear John papers 2 weeks into his last deployment, Blake had told me the night before. Unable to sleep. Just couldn't handle the loneliness, he said. "That's awful," I'd murmured against his chest. "I could never do that to you." "I know," he'd said, kissing the top of my head. "That's why I'm not worried." He should have been worried. He should have married someone stronger, someone who understood that loneliness was part of the deal, that empty beds and silent phones and single parenting were what you signed up for when you loved a soldier. Instead, he married me, and I couldn't even make it 2 months. The first 2 weeks were almost romantic in their tragedy. I slept in his shirts, wrote long emails about everything and nothing, sent care packages filled with his favorite snacks, and printed photos of us. The other wives welcomed me into their fold, teaching me the unwritten rules of deployment survival. Stay busy, don't watch the news, keep your phone charged at all times in case he calls. "The first deployment is the hardest," said Jennifer, whose husband was on his 3rd tour. "But you'll get through it. We all do." She didn't mention that some of us get through it by sleeping with other people's husbands. That was my own special addition to the survival guide. Tyler was Jennifer's husband's best friend, left behind due to a training injury that kept him stateside while his unit deployed. I met him at one of those mandatory fun events the Family Readiness Group organized, a barbecue meant to boost morale but mostly just reminded us all that our husbands were gone. He was helping with the grill, favoring his left leg, looking as miserable as I felt. Our eyes met across the pavilion, and in his, I saw my own loneliness looking back at me. That should have been my first warning. Instead, it felt like recognition, like finding someone broken in the same places. "You're Blake's wife," he said when I went to get a burger. Not a question. "Hannah," I said, even though he already knew my name. Everyone knew everyone here. "Tyler, I work with Blake, good man." "The best," I agreed and meant it, which makes what happened next even worse. We started talking. Just normal conversation about the weather, the deployment, how strange it was to be left behind. His wife, Ashley, was deployed too, same unit as Blake. We were mirror images of abandonment. And maybe that's what made it so easy to cross lines. "You want to get out of here?" he asked after an hour of circling each other with conversation. "This whole thing is depressing." I should have said no. Should have gone home to my empty house and Blake's side of the bed and the loneliness that was my duty to endure. Instead, I said yes. We went to a bar off post, the kind of place where soldiers didn't hang out, where we could pretend to be normal people instead of military spouses waiting for our lives to restart. 3 beers in, Tyler told me about his injury, how it might end his career, how Ashley was getting promoted while he was stuck in medical limbo. 4 beers in, I told him about moving here for Blake, giving up my job, my friends, everything familiar for a man I'd known less than a year before we married. "We met at a party junior year," I said, peeling the label off my beer bottle. "He was home on leave, looked like a movie star in his dress blues. I was hooked before he even said hello." "Let me guess," Tyler said. "Whirlwind romance, proposal before deployment?" 2 weeks before he left for his first tour, I admitted. "Everyone said we were crazy, but when you know, right?" "That's what Ashley and I said too." He lifted his beer in a mock toast. "Here's to knowing." The bitterness in his voice matched the taste in my mouth. We drank to knowing, to not knowing, to being left behind while our spouses went off to play hero. By the 5th beer, I was telling him things I'd never admitted out loud. "Sometimes I wake up and forget he's gone," I said. "I reach for him and hit empty space, and for a second I can't breathe. Then I remember, and I can't breathe for a different reason." "The house is too quiet," Tyler agreed. "I leave the TV on all night just for the noise. Ashley hates that, says I'm wasting electricity. But she's not here to complain, is she?" "Do you regret it?" he asked. "Marrying into this life?" "Sometimes," I admitted, then felt guilty for the honesty. "I love him, but—" "But love doesn't make the days shorter," Tyler finished. That was Thursday. By Saturday, we were texting constantly. Nothing inappropriate at first, just checking in, sharing memes, complaining about the FRG leader who sent 17 emails a day. But there was an undercurrent, an electricity that made my phone feel hot in my hand every time his name appeared on the screen. Blake called on Sunday. The connection was terrible, his voice cutting in and out, but hearing him made my chest tight with guilt. He told me about the heat, the sand that got into everything, how he missed my cooking even though I could barely make mac and cheese without burning it. "I love you," he said, the words crystal clear despite the distance. "I love you too," I replied while Tyler's latest text sat unread on my phone. That's the thing about emotional affairs. They start so innocently you can lie to yourself about what's happening. Just friends, just talking, just 2 lonely people keeping each other company. Until suddenly you're sitting in his car at 2 a.m, parked behind a closed Walmart, and you can't remember how you got from point A to point wherever the hell this was. "We should stop," I said that night, not moving away when he reached for my hand. "We should," he agreed, interlacing our fingers. Neither of us stopped. The physical part started 19 days after Blake left. Tyler had invited me over to watch a movie, innocent enough except we both knew it wasn't. His house looked exactly like mine, same base housing floor plan, same government-issued furniture. But it smelled different, felt different, was missing the specific stain of being in another woman's home while she served her country. "Want a tour?" he asked, gesturing toward the hallway. "It's literally the same as my house," I said, but I followed him anyway. He showed me the spare room Ashley used as an office, her certificates and awards on the wall. Their bedroom door was closed. "That's just, he said, suddenly awkward. "Yeah," I said, though we both knew we'd end up in there eventually. The gravity of it was already pulling us. We made it through 20 minutes of the movie before he kissed me. I'd been expecting it, waiting for it, had worn my good bra for it. But when it happened, I still pretended to be surprised. Like this wasn't exactly what I'd come here for. We shouldn't, I said, not moving away. I know, he said, pulling me closer. I took off Blake's ring before Tyler kissed me again. Set it carefully on the nightstand next to a photo of Ashley in her ACUs. 2 betrayals witnessing each other in that standard-issue bedroom. Tyler's wedding ring stayed on. I felt it cold against my skin and pretended not to notice the way it made everything worse. I remember thinking, as we fumbled with clothes and excuses, that at least Blake would never have to know what our bed looked like with another man in it. At least I was betraying him in someone else's sheets, as if geography made any difference to vows. Afterward, lying in sheets that smelled like unfamiliar detergent, I waited for the guilt to crush me. Instead, I felt oddly empty, like I'd crossed some invisible line and discovered there was nothing on the other side but more of the same loneliness, just with company. This was a mistake, I said. Yeah, Tyler agreed, already reaching for me again. The second time was worse. No surprise, no alcohol, no temporary insanity to hide behind. The second time was a choice, made in daylight, with Blake's ring watching from the nightstand where I'd set it like a witness to my own trial. We carried on for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of deleted texts and careful alibis, and avoiding the places where other military spouses might see us together. 3 weeks of Tyler's wedding ring catching the light while he touched me. 3 weeks of Blake's ring sitting on my nightstand, abandoned but still warm from my body heat, like it was waiting for me to come to my senses. Jennifer figured it out first. Of course she did. She'd been a military wife for 12 years, had seen every kind of deployment drama there was. She cornered me at the commissary, right between the cereal and the coffee. I know what you're doing, she said quietly. And you need to stop. I don't know what you're talking about, I said, but my face burned with shame. Tyler's truck was at your house 3 nights this week. We live on the same street, Hannah. I'm not stupid. She looked around to make sure no one was listening. Look, I get it. Deployment is hard, but this isn't the answer. You don't understand, I started. I've been through 7 deployments, she cut me off. I understand better than you think. You think you're the first wife to get lonely? To have some man pay attention to her while her husband's gone? You're not special, Hannah, you're just selfish. The word hit like a slap. That's not, isn't it? Tyler's injured, vulnerable. His wife's gone. You're lonely, scared, looking for someone to make you feel less alone. But you know what? That's what the rest of us are for. The other wives. The support system. Not someone else's husband. It's not like that, I lied. We're just friends. Jennifer laughed, but there was no humor in it. Friends don't park in each other's driveways at 2 a.m. Friends don't delete their text messages. Friends don't look at each other the way you two did at the battalion picnic. She'd seen. Of course she'd seen. In a community this small, someone always sees. Here's what's going to happen, she continued, her voice taking on the tone of someone who'd given this speech before. You're going to end it. Today. You're going to block his number, avoid him at events, and pretend he doesn't exist. Because if you don't, if you keep this up, it won't just be your marriage that ends. It'll be Ashley's too. Tyler's career, your reputation. Everything burns when these things come to light, and they always come to light. I abandoned my cart and left, driving home with shaking hands. That night I told Tyler we were done. He didn't argue, just nodded like he'd been expecting it. We'd both been waiting for reality to catch up with us. Ashley gets back in 2 months, he said. I want to make things right with her. Blake has 4 more months, I said. I don't know how to face him. You don't tell him, Tyler said simply. You bury it and move on and be the wife he deserves when he comes home. But I couldn't bury it. The guilt ate at me, made me sick, made me jump every time my phone rang, thinking somehow Blake knew. I stopped going to FRG meetings, couldn't face the glances, the silence that said more than words, the coffee cups gripped tighter when I walked in. I stopped answering Jennifer's calls, stopped pretending I was anything other than the worst kind of military wife. Blake knew something was wrong. His emails got shorter, more concerned. Are you okay? You seem distant. Do I need to worry? Yes, I wanted to write. Worry about everything. Worry that you married a woman who couldn't even stay faithful for 2 months. Worry that your ring wasn't enough to keep me in our bed. Worry that I'm exactly what everyone warns soldiers about. Instead, I wrote back that I was fine, just tired, just missing him. All true, all lies. 3 weeks after ending things with Tyler, I cracked and texted him. Just, "How are you?" at 1 a.m, but it was enough to restart everything. He showed up at my door 20 minutes later, and I let him in because I was weak and lonely and angry at Blake for leaving me. Angry at the army for taking him. Angry at myself for not being stronger. "This is stupid," Tyler said, even as he followed me to the bedroom. "I know," I said, already pulling him down for a kiss. We were more careful the second time around. His truck never stayed overnight. We met at hotels off post, splitting the cost like business partners conducting a transaction, which is what we were, really. 2 people paying for the illusion of not being alone. The truth came out the way it always does in military towns. Jennifer told her husband. Her husband told his buddy. The buddy told someone else. By the time the story reached Blake's unit, I was apparently sleeping with half of Fort Campbell. The rumor mill twisted a 3-week betrayal into some kind of deployment prostitution ring. Blake's commanding officer pulled him aside, told him what was being said. Blake didn't believe it at first, called me immediately despite the cost. "Tell me it's not true," he said, his voice steady but strange. "Tell me they're lying." I couldn't speak. The silence stretched between continents, heavy with truth. "Hannah, please." "It's not what they're saying," I finally managed. "It's not like that." "But there's something to tell," he said, not a question. "Yes." "Who?" "Blake." "Who?" His voice cracked on the word. "Tyler Morrison." The silence that followed was worse than any screaming could have been. I could hear his breathing, ragged and wrong, could picture him in some makeshift communication center, surrounded by other soldiers who probably knew exactly what this call was about. "Tyler," he repeated. "Ashley's Tyler, my buddy Tyler. Blake, How long?" "It's over now. It's been over..." "How long?" 3 weeks, but Blake, it didn't mean..." He hung up. I called back 17 times. He never answered. 2 days later, I got an email from his platoon sergeant, brief and professional, informing me that Specialist Coleman had requested no further personal contact during his deployment. Any emergency communication should go through official channels. I was also informed that spreading rumors about soldiers' spouses was conduct unbecoming and could result in being banned from post. The rumors. By then, they'd morphed into something unrecognizable, each telling more sordid than the last. According to the gossip mill, I'd been with 6 men. Tyler, the FedEx driver, someone's visiting brother. The stories got more elaborate with each telling, but they all started with the grain of truth. I was unfaithful while my husband served his country. The divorce papers arrived a month later, delivered by his lawyer with the efficiency of military precision. Uncontested, no fault, the cleanest break possible. Blake gave me everything. The car, the furniture, enough money to start over somewhere else. All he wanted was his grandmother's ring back and for me to be gone when he returned. I moved to Chattanooga 3 hours away, close enough to be familiar, but far enough that I'd never accidentally run into anyone from Fort Campbell. Got a job at a call center, rented a studio apartment, tried to build a life that had nothing to do with the army, or deployments or wedding rings worn on thumbs. Blake came home last month. I know because Jennifer texted me a photo from the welcome home ceremony. He looked thinner, but otherwise the same, holding someone else's baby for the photo op, smiling like he meant it. His left hand was visible in the picture. No ring, not even a tan line anymore. I still have his ring. Couldn't bring myself to mail it back. Couldn't bring myself to sell it. It sits in my jewelry box, nested inside my own abandoned wedding band. 2 circles of broken promises. Sometimes I hold them, still warm from the box, and remember the morning he left them with me for safekeeping. "You've got the most important job," he'd said, kissing me goodbye, "keeping the home fires burning." Instead, I burned down our entire life for 3 weeks of feeling less alone. 3 weeks of another woman's husband in my bed while both our spouses served their country. 3 weeks that cost me everything worth keeping. Tyler and Ashley are still together, from what I hear. She never found out, or if she did, she forgave him. They're expecting their first baby. Jennifer mentioned it in her last text before I blocked her too. Some people get second chances they don't deserve. I work nights now at the call center, sleep during the days when normal people are living their lives. It's easier than facing the world that knows what kind of person I am. The kind who takes a soldier's trust and breaks it before his deployment bags are even unpacked. The kind who makes every stereotype about military spouses true. My therapist says I need to forgive myself, that people make mistakes, that loneliness and stress can make us do things we never thought possible. But she's never been a military wife, never worn her husband's ring on her thumb while he risked his life overseas, never been trusted with holding down the fort only to invite the enemy inside. The ring was still warm when I slept with Tyler that first time, fresh from my hand, carrying my body heat like an accusation. That's what I think about most. Not the sex or the guilt or even the divorce. Just that warm metal circle, waiting on a nightstand, still holding the shape of my promise while I broke it in the next room. Blake's stationed in Germany now. Career soldier, despite everything. Promoted twice since the divorce. I looked him up online once, found a photo from some military ball. He had a date, a blonde lieutenant with a smile that looked genuine. Good for him. He deserves someone who can keep promises, who can weather deployments without falling into another man's bed, who understands that some things are worth waiting for. I understand that now, too late to matter. The ring taught me that. How even metal can hold warmth longer than a human heart. How some circles, once broken, leave circles that never close. How a soldier's trust, once lost, doesn't come with second chances. My name is Hannah, and I was the keeper of the ring, the holder of trust, the wife who was supposed to wait. Instead, I became another cautionary tale whispered at FRG meetings, another reason for soldiers to worry about what happens at home while they're gone. The ring was still warm when I proved I was never worth the faith he placed in me. Some circles are made to be broken. I just wish I'd learned that before I broke the ones that mattered most. Now all I have is the ring. Still warm from the box, never cold enough to forget.